if when you see this picture, if the first thing you think of is, you know what, when I see a 49ers fan on Saturday, this is my type of energy. If you feel the exact same way, hit that subscribe button and make sure you guys get ready to take down the 49ers Report and all the 49ers fans this Saturday here on the Raiders Report. Coming up here on the Raiders Report, we're going to be looking at the top 10 players on the silver and black that I think are on the hot seat. Now, to me, a hot seat candidate for this video is a player that I've talked about potentially making the roster. So I put out a lot, and I mean a lot, of 53-man roster videos this offseason. And a lot of the players that are on this show were featured on those videos of me saying, hey, this is a guy that I think could end up helping this team. This is a player who I think could end up making the roster. So the players that you're going to see here are guys that I've talked about making it, that if they don't have a better game against the 49ers, if they don't start turning it up during training camp, during joint practice, then they're not going to end up making this squad. These players are going to be ranked from 10 all the way down to 1. Number 1 is the player that I think is on the hottest seat. Let's go to number 10 here on the show, and it's going to be linebacker Cody Lindenberg. I understand that the Raiders drafted Lindenberg in the 7th round, but let me be very clear here. Despite him being drafted this season by this regime, he is not a lock to make the roster. Do I think that this is going to be somebody that does end up making the squad? Yes, I do. But if you tell me right now the Raiders keep 5 linebackers, I don't know if Lindenberg's going to be the guy that ends up making it. Because I think right now between him and Tommy Eichenberg, that's linebacker 5. Because the top 4 linebackers for the Silver and Black are Jermaine Pratt, Landon Roberts, and Devin White. Now, in that game that he had this past week against Seattle, he played in 25 snaps, had a 53.8 overall PFF grade, and I do know that he's fighting right now for that spot, but you have to also consider Matt Jones, and I say that because where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a little bit of smoke. I'm not saying there's a lot of smoke. There is a little bit of smoke right now around Matt Jones as a player that this team does like, and he's been getting some hype. I don't think he's going to take away Lindenberg's job, but Cody, you are not a lock to make this squad. Let's go to number 9 here, and it's going to be cornerback Darnay Holmes. And Vincent Bonsignor called Holmes a lock earlier in the week. I think that that's a very unfair statement to make for Darnay, and I only say that because the Raiders have been using a lot of different players in the nickel. They've been using different corners. They've been using safeties to play down in that role. He didn't start for the Las Vegas Raiders, but he did play 12 snaps against Seattle. Played okay, 63.4 overall PFF grade. But because I know how much the Raiders like Greedy Vance, and Vance could be the player that, if you were looking at long-term, right, the next 2 to 3 years, do you think Darnay Holmes or Greedy Vance are going to be better in 2 to 3 years? I think Greedy Vance is going to be better in 2 to 3 years. And then also Kai Blue Kelly. He got some work today with the ones. Also has been a player that had an 83 overall PFF grade, second highest of the defense. They've been working him at outside corner, and they've been working him in the nickel a little bit. If you're the Raiders and you go, all right, I want to be able to keep a guy like Greedy Vance, and I want to be able to keep the other cornerbacks that I have, and it's between Darnay Holmes and Kai Blue Kelly, I'm going to keep the player that I think offers me more versatility, and that's Kai Blue Kelly over Darnay Holmes. Now, I want to know this question. Are you going to the Raiders and 49ers game? If the answer to that is yes, please let me know where you're going to be sitting. Y'all are about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. While that ad is playing, I want you to scroll on down and answer this question. If your answer to this question is no, then you definitely need to tune into the Raiders Report because we're going to be giving away a Raiders and 49ers game ticket during our Thursday live show, so make sure you're there. Let's go to number 8 here. It's going to be running back Sincere McCormick. And McCormick is one of these players that I probably should have put maybe higher on this list, but at the exact same time, I just think that there's other players with a higher priority that deserve to be higher and had a higher, I guess we'll call it hot seat. McCormick, to me, if he wants to make this squad, I don't need a running back that can run between the tackles. To me, McCormick's got to be able to show this coaching staff that he can pass protect. And he did do a good job with that in the end. 82.8 PFF grade in terms of pass blocking against Seattle. That's a good sign. He did play in only 14 snaps. That was less than Dylan Laube and Collier. And to me, like, those are the two players that he's going up against right now. But he's also battling Laube and Collier and White for potentially that final roster spot. But then also, I mentioned this during our live show on Tuesday. For McCormick, it's McCormick, Bachman, Laube, Collier. All of these players are kind of in a mix right now between punt return and kick return duties. Sincere McCormick, to me, is not going to make this squad based on what he does between the tackles. Sincere McCormick's going to make this squad based on what he does on special teams, how he does as a pass protector. That's how he's going to end up making this team. Let's go to number 7 here. It's going to be defensive tackle Leki Fotu. And I'll be very clear. I do not anticipate Fotu to play against the 49ers. So some of you are going, well, Mitch, why is he on the hot seat? He's on the hot seat because if other players continue to show the Raiders that they can be relied upon, because you got to be available, right? Like, you can't have a team like the Raiders right now who just lost Christian Wilkins. And then you can't carry another defensive tackle like Leki Fotu unless he is 100% healthy. So every day that Fotu misses and he gives Jonnu Lalu, Zach Carter, Thomas Booker, even Tank Booker, all these other defensive tackles, they get more and more reps, more and more opportunities to show this coaching staff, hey, I deserve that job. That makes it more and more difficult for Fotu. And I know that he's been in a walking boot, and I know that he's been banged up. But when Christian Wilkins ended up getting released, the first player the Raiders put out there on the field to be that Wilkins replacement was Fotu. And I'll tell you this, I do not think right now he is a guy that's going to end up making the squad unless he can prove to this team that he's healthy and he can get out there. We will end up seeing, but I do think he's on the hot seat. Let's go to number 6 here on my Raiders on the hot seat. It's going to be safety/cornerback JT Woods. Now, the Raiders did just put Woods as their, we'll call it, second depth guy on their depth chart. They essentially replaced Jacorian Bennett with JT Woods. And I know that he was signed recently, and I know that the Raiders do like his versatility. However, he did only play in the fourth quarter against Seattle. And when he did play, he was bad. And it was rough, right? It was rough. He was over-pursuing, missed tackles, a 35.6 overall PFF grade. I also then, you got to look at what the Raiders did after that preseason game. They go out and they get a guy like Terrell Edmonds, and I'm not saying Edmonds is a direct, competition for JT Woods, but when you go out and you add a safety for a player that has some safety background, that makes me think a little bit. Also, you just got to consider the fact that, yes, this team does like Harper. They're also going to evaluate Trey Taylor and Chris Smith, and this is a team that does like Lonnie Johnson Jr., and they're hoping that he's going to be back week 4 or 5. I don't think that JT Woods is going to end up making this squad, but a few weeks ago, he definitely at least had a shot. Before we get into our top 5 players here, the guys that have the most to prove, the guys that are on the hottest seat going into that 49ers game, if the seat's too hot, maybe you got to put these shorts on. They're pretty cool. Go to chatsports.com/Raiders sale. Whether you need shorts, a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, if it is Raiders related and it is on sale, some of the stuff is up to 50% off. If you go to chatsports.com/Raiders sale, you're going to be able to get the best deals that you need. And again, I don't know what you guys like. I don't know what sizes you wear. But if you're somebody where you go, I like Raider stuff and I like things that are on sale, that's going to be the link for you. I put it for you guys down in the comments, down in the description. I promise you this. I wear Raider stuff all the time. Often I get asked, Mitch, where'd you get that hat? Mitch, where'd you get that shirt? Mitch, where'd you get that Raider stuff? Chatsports.com/Raiders sale. You can find anything that your heart desires. There's all stuff for your kids, for your significant others. And like me, I don't really buy a lot of stuff for myself, but if I know that I'm going to be going to a Raiders game, if I know that I'm going to be out at the Raiders event on August 22nd out in Tucson, Arizona with Fabian Moreno at Desert Shark, I'm going to wear some Raiders gear. And I always want to be looking my best in my new Raiders stuff. So go to chatsports.com/Raiders sale. All right, let's go now to our top 5 here for Raiders on the hot seat. And if anybody out there is like, Mitch, I want to see some starters. This is not going to be a show where starters are going to be featured. This is roster bubble guys. I'm going to put Chris Smith on this list, and he is a safety, and he has been somebody that has been filling in for the Raiders in terms of their Lonnie Johnson Jr. However, though, okay, and I want to make this very clear. The Raiders' first choice right now on defense during training camp practice, during the Raiders mock game, and even up against Seattle was to put Chris Smith in that Lonnie Johnson Jr. role, which I would consider as like, I'll call it a big nickel, right? Where they go out, they put nickel defense out there, and instead of putting a nickel corner, they put a safety, they drop him down. The problem was for Chris Smith, he was given the most snaps out of any player on defense, 45 total snaps, and he struggled. 55.8 overall grade. And to me, I'm somebody why I like rumors. I like tea leaves. I like where there's smoke, there's fire, because I would sit back and I go, the Raiders said, hey, Chris Smith, go out there and take advantage of this opportunity. We're going to give you more snaps than any other player in that preseason game. And he goes out there and doesn't wow. In fact, he played a little So what do the Raiders do 2 days later? They go out and they sign Terrell Edmunds, a safety who is literally going to try to fill in that Lonnie Johnson Jr. role and literally going to try to fill that void for Chris Smith. And I know Smith was getting reps over Edmunds today. Again, I'm recording this on Tuesday, but I think it's because it's like his first actual practice with the Raiders, and I would not be surprised if next week if we see Terrell Edmunds taking snaps over Chris Smith. For that reason, I have Smith at number 5. Let's go to number 4 here for our hot seat candidates. It's going to be Tommy Mellott, the Raiders' 6th-round pick, I believe 213th overall from Montana State. And just like I said earlier about Lindenberg, but you're going to notice, Lindenberg was at 10. Melott's at 4. Melott's seat is much, much more hot than Lindenberg because I think Lindenberg is more of a chance to make the roster compared to Tommy. He played only 7 snaps against Seattle, and he is buried on this depth chart. He's buried at the wide receiver position, and he's buried on special teams. Like, I thought that was going to be the way that the Raiders ended up making this team. But in the brand new depth chart that was just released, Malot is at the very, very bottom of it. And it's because he's not ready right now. Pete Carroll has said multiple times, this is a football team that wants to win, and they want to win right now. If Malot doesn't show that he has any chance to help them win this season, maybe the Raiders move on. But I do think that this is a smart franchise, and I do think this is a smart staff that says, you know what? We knew Malot was going to be a project, and we believe in our coaching staff, and we believe to be able to get Malot ready in 2 to 3 years. For that reason, I do still think that he ends up making it. But if the Raiders want to keep receivers that help them now, Alex Bachman and Philip Dorsett are above a player like Tommy Mellott. So I want you to be a hater. And hater might be a strong word, but at the end of the day, I want people to, when they pull up here to the Raiders report, I don't want you to be afraid to give your honest opinion. And if your honest opinion is around a player that's struggling a little bit, that's okay. That's healthy conversation. Unhealthy conversation is thinking everything's cupcakes, rainbows, and butterflies. So I want you to name a Raiders player that you think is on the hot seat right now. Who knows? They might even be in my top 3. Let's go to linebacker here, Amari Gainer, and I hate that he is on this because I don't think Amari Gainer has really done anything wrong. I think it's actually a little bit more of wrong place at the wrong time, wrong scheme fit, and I can't even believe that that this organization doesn't value him because all the other Raiders linebackers to me are a little bit underwhelming in terms of the coverage game, but you got to look at what the Raiders are doing. The Raiders went out, they got Jamal Adams. They have 3 other guys in Jermaine Pratt, Devin White, and Landon Roberts, all on 1-year deals. They like Tommy Eichenberg, and they like Cody Lindenberg, and they like Matt Jones. Based on the conversations I've heard, the amount of conversations I heard in May and in June on Amari Gainer compared to now, I'm not getting anything. And to me, if I'm not getting any information on a fringe roster spot guy, there's probably a reason behind that. He played in only 4 snaps. That's a 64.6 overall PFF grade. I do know that he can show that he can cover, and I do like the special teams value that he brings. But unfortunately, I just don't think that Gainer's going to end up making this squad. I don't know what team he's going to end up landing on. Maybe he lands on another squad, and I think that there will be other teams that give him an opportunity because he's he goes out there and he plays really, really hard. He goes out there and he competes. But overall, I don't think it looks too good right now for Amari Gainer. Coming up next here, though, I got 2 more Raiders on the hot seat. And I've seen the one player's name mentioned a few times down below. And it shouldn't be any surprise who my number 1 player would be. If you watch this show enough, I think you can guess who my number 1 guy is. Though, I might surprise some people with who number 2 is. Before you guys leave today's program, I do want you to set a calendar reminder. First calendar reminder is I'm going to be live Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. It's going to be Raiders Friday Happy Hour on a Thursday. And you know what? I'm going to be giving away 2 tickets for Raiders 49ers on Thursday. I don't want you to miss that opportunity. On Saturday, during the Raiders and 49ers preseason game, we're going to be going live 2 hours early. I'm going to be giving away a Raiders regular season ticket. And this one is one you're not gonna want to miss. Before, though, I get into the top 2, I also want to give a shout-out to the Noti Gang. RJ Van, Hammering Raider Hank, Bay Raider RG, Lorenzo Vio Music, and Larry Beeville. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Noti Gang. If you don't know what the Noti Gang is, It's something that I always look for. The people that predicate themselves on being number one down in the comments when a Raiders video drops. These are people that I see. These are people that I appreciate, and I just want y'all to know that I rock with y'all. Let's go to number 2 here on our Raiders on the hot seat, and I'm going to put up safety Trey Taylor. Taylor was drafted in the 7th round last season, former Jim Thorpe Award winner, and a player that I do think deserves to be on a 53-man roster on some NFL teams. But I don't know if it's just a bad fit with this regime. He has definitely taken a step back in development based on what I've heard from, people from the Raiders. And I say that, and I'm upset about it because I believe in Taylor from a talent standpoint. And I think that he's just not the right fit right now with this Patrick Graham defense, and he's not the right fit right now with, what Pete Carroll's trying to instill, and they keep bringing in these brand new safeties. And he was really bad, against Seattle. He was 30 snaps in total, 35.2 overall PFF grade. And just like I mentioned earlier with Chris Smith, teams will tell you what they think of a player based on their actions. And putting out Chris Smith and putting out Trey Taylor and being 2 players that had the top 5 in terms of snaps played in that game, and then what do? They go out and they add basically that replacement, and they did it in Terrell Edmonds. So, Trey, if you want to make the team, you got to play better up against the 49ers, and I'm really going to be rooting for you, dude. But coming in here at number 1, the player that is on the hottest seat, it's got to be Thayer Munford. And I say that because I really, really, really tried to watch every snap that Munford had. Because when I watched the game live, I remember thinking to myself, my God, Thayer Munford cannot be on an NFL roster. I went back and I watched the tape, and I felt the exact same way. He is a major liability in the pass-protecting game. He's probably better suited to be a run blocker. I still can't figure out why we're not putting him at guard, because I think anybody that has an ounce of NFL knowledge, when you turn on the tape of Thayer Munford, you just see how slow he is. And he looks like a guy that's got cinder blocks in his feet, and he just can't move. I don't know if there's an injury that we don't know about. I don't know if there's something going on, but he clearly just doesn't look good. And he's been on the team for the past 3 seasons, 51 snaps played. It's tied for the most in that game against Seattle. A 36.6 overall PFF grade, I think, is honestly a generous grade, but he's been battling for roster spots. And for the Raiders right now, you got to find another offensive lineman, because our offensive line depth, it's not good enough where it stands right now, and I don't want a situation where if Thayer Munford's out there on the field, that's a risk for Geno Smith. And we can't put Geno Smith in those situations. Quite frankly, we can't put Thayer Munford out on the field anymore. We've given him so many tests this offseason already, and he was really bad last season. If I'm the Raiders, I'm trying to figure out a way to give another offensive lineman an opportunity. Quite frankly, give it to Dalton Wagner. If you want to take a project flyer on a guy, I'd much rather the Raiders give a shot to a guy like Dalton Wagner than Thayer Munford, because if you can't see that Munford don't have it, Munford don't have it. And I don't know what to tell you. I don't tell you Brendan Carroll. I don't tell you Pete. Thayer Munford don't have it, and we all can see it. So here are the top 10 players, in my opinion, on the Raiders on the hot seat. From 10 all the way down to 1, I saw somebody say, Mitch, where's Aiden O'Connell? Aiden O'Connell is not a cut risk. Aiden O'Connell could be traded, but I don't think that that's ultimately what's going to happen. If you want to take a screenshot of this, if you want to tag me on Instagram, if you want to tag me on Twitter, every person that tags me with this screenshot, I promise you, if I see it, I will post it on my Instagram at Mitchell Renz 365. And again, before I get out of here today, we're giving away a Raiders ticket for Raiders 49ers on our Thursday show, and we're going to be giving away a Raiders regular season ticket on Saturday when the Raiders end up playing the San Francisco 49ers. If you're a real one, if you hate the 49ers, and if you see a 49ers fan on Saturday, if you're going to go Geno Smith on them, I definitely want to see you there. Shout out to all y'all.